Good morning. My name is Yariv. I'm TDK-Lambda Israel Sales Director. We are happy to host you in TDK-Lambda Israel third webinar initiative that we started this year. It's our first global webinar, and we are happy that also our worldwide partner joined this time. During the last 2 decades, the GENESYS product series became the world-leading programmable power supply that used in a wide scale of application. Thanks to TDK-Lambda well-known reliability, advanced features, and strong and global support. The GENESYS Plus that joined to our line 2 years ago add to that well-known benefit new and leading-edge software and hardware features. Those features will be presented to you today. For any question you have during the session, please add to the Q&A in the bottom of your screen. Aryeh will try to answer all your questions right after his presentation. Please keep follow us in the social media, and I hope that to see you in our next webinar as well. Any requests from your side for future topics that interesting you are most welcome. You can write it also in the Q&A screen. So let's start. Aryeh, please.
Thank you very much, Yariv. Hi, everyone. My name is Aryeh. I am the software group manager in TDK-Lambda Israel R&D. You are here with me for the next hour. I hope you will enjoy. The topic of our webinar for today is the unique features of the GENESYS Plus series. We will start from the introduction, dive into its features, and see some new updates of the series and some very strong software abilities. Let's go over the agenda. As I already mentioned, I will introduce the GENESYS Plus series and the GENESYS Scalable Power series. For some of you, it will be just an overview, as you are probably familiar with the series. I will go over the advanced parallel and parallel kits, especially for high power parallel. You will see in my slides. I will go over the unique features, fast models for the automotive market. There are many questions regarding communication speed, so we will compare this so you can easily choose the correct power supply for your application. New features that I'm going to introduce are the power sync option, isolated analog IS420 for the GENESYS Plus series. We will dive into GUI, virtual control panels. There is a new revision, and some additional optional interface for the GENESYS series. It's the LAN plus USB. So let's start. The GENESYS Plus and the GENESYS Scalable Power series, the GSP we call it, cover very high power and very low power applications from 1 kilowatt up to 15 kilowatt power. The GENESYS Plus series and the GSP series are positioned in the programmable power products line. These are intended for higher performance, higher functionality compared to the GENESYS. A very important note here, it does not mean that we are going to obsolete GENESYS. We are continuing to manufacture GENESYS. The GENESYS Plus is here to address additional applications, higher performance, higher functionality. Let's start from the smallest guy in the family, the 1 and the 1.5 kilowatts in a half rack. Key specifications here are 1 and 1.5 kilowatts of output power, 19-inch 1U half rack chassis. The depth is only 432 millimeters, so the unit is very narrow. It's very light as well, less than 4 kilograms. Output voltage range is 10 volts up to 600 volts, and the output current is up to 1.7 amps for the 600 volt models and up to 150 amps for the 10 volt models. You can see very high current for such a small form factor. As for the input covers the whole one phase range, starting from 85 volts up to 265 volts AC. The efficiency is above 86% at 100 volts AC and above 88% for 200 volts AC input at full load condition. To keep the noise and the surrounding as quiet as possible, the fan speed is controlled by the ambient temperature and the load. An important key feature here is the rack mounting option. You can see the part number GHRM. If you need to stack 2 GENESYS half units in a single 1U rack, you can do it using the kit. And you can see the options here in a combined picture here. The next one, the full rack, the full 1U, full width unit, starting from here, for example, 1.7 kilowatts of output power, a 19-inch 1U chassis. The depth here is also very narrow, only 441.5 millimeters. The weight is less than 5 kilograms. Output voltage range is identical for the whole series. And the output current covers 2.8 up to 170 amps. Also in this option, the input covers the whole one phase range, 85 up to 265 volts AC. Here in this case, in this 1.7 kilowatts of power, the efficiency is above 88% for the whole range, for whole input line at full load condition. And of course, the fan speed is for the whole series, controlled by the ambient temperature and load. Let's go to the 2.7 and 3.4 kilowatts, a bit higher power, same chassis, sorry. The weight is less than 6.25 kilograms, same output voltage range. The output current here, there are two options as we are talking about 2.7 and 3.4. For the 2.7, we cover from 4.5 amps up to 264 amps. And for the 3.4 kilowatts, we cover from 5.6 amps up to 340 amps for the 10 volts models. Here we can see additional input options. We have the three-phase 208, which covers 170 up to 265 volts AC three-phase. We have the high three-phase, which covers the three-phase 400, 342 volts AC up to 460 volts AC. And the one-phase 208, which covers 170 up to 265 volts AC, the high range of the one phase. The efficiency here is above 88% as well, and the fan speed is controlled by the ampere temperature and load. Okay, let's go to the biggest brother in the 5 kilowatts family. The depth is identical as for the whole series, 441.5 millimeters. You can see how light the unit is less than 7.5 kilograms. The output voltage range is identical as for the whole series, 10 volts up to 600 volts. And the output current range starts from 8.5 amps for the 600 volts up to 500 amps for the 10 volts unit. Please note the input voltage range here. All are three-phase. 208 is the lowest one, starting from 170 up to 265 volts AC. We have the three-phase 400, the higher one, which covers 342 volts AC up to 460 volts AC. And another input which doesn't exist in the GENESYS series is the highest input in the series, three-phase 480, which starts from 342 volts up to 528 volts. So we can see that this type of option covers the three-phase 400 as well. The efficiency of the 5 kilowatt series is above 89% at full load condition. And here the fan is controlled by ambient temperature and the load as well. Let's go to the GENESYS scalable power, the bigger brothers in the family. The output power, here is 10 kilowatts. It's 19-inch in 2U chassis, same depth as the whole series. The weight is less than 15 kilograms. And we can see that the output current range is increased up to 1000 amps for the 10 volt model. The input voltage range is identical as to the 5 kilowatts. And the efficiency is also above 89%. The fan speed is controlled by ambient temperature and load. Let's jump to the biggest brother in the family, in the GENESYS scalable power. The output power is 15 kilowatts in a 3U chassis. The voltage range is identical. The output current is up to 1500 amps. Same input range. Efficiency is above 89%. And the fan speed here is well controlled by ambient temperature and load for the whole range. Okay, let's take a look at the front and the rear panels. Let's start from the smallest guy in the family, the GENESYS half rack, GENESYS Plus half rack, 1.5 kilowatt options. So we can see that we have up to 1.5 kilowatts in 1 U height in a half rack. The front panel display has very high contrast, very wide viewing angle. It's 16 segments LCD. So the digits and the menus are very readable, and you actually have the option to control the brightness to fit to your application. The buttons to navigate the menu are very user-friendly. There is an LED inside each button, so you can easily navigate. And the power supply model is on the front to identify the unit. As for the rear side, we have a Phoenix contact input connector, which is a header and plug type. The mating plug is available in the accessories kit. The option slot to install additional options like IEEE, Modbus, EtherCAT. We have the Sense connector, which is a spring cage type for easy installation and for a lower profile, lower space. So you just plug the wire inside the connector. In this picture, we can see the output busbars, which are from the low voltage series. The analog signals, which includes the analog programming monitoring functions, interlock functions, programmable signals for relay control, and so on. USB 2.0, you can see the orange plug, which means high retention. So the cable can be easily pulled out during operation. We have two RJ45 connectors for the RS-232-485 to provide the JZ chain option configuration. We have a LAN, which is 10 and 100 megabits per second LXI 1.5 fully certified. And we have included the parallel connectors for the GENESYS half rack as well, so you can increase the power for these small units as well as needed. The reset button is there if you have missed something in configuration, if you have made some wrong configuration, or you just want to disassemble the unit and send it out of your factory. You can simply reset the settings to default settings, so the EEPROM is wiped out. In this series, you have seen the input connector and header plug. You have also the option to order the IEC type plug if it suits better for your application. Let's go to the full rack, full width size. So we can see that we have up to 5 kilowatts of power in a 1 U height. In the front, you can see the power supply model for identification, the legendary GENESYS logo style. The air intake is front to rear. So it's very easy and very convenient for the standard tracks application. You can see the same display for the whole series. Here I have an image with the LEDs inside the buttons lit up, so you can see how it looks like when these are lit. As for the rear panel, we have here as well the Phoenix contact plug. It's a bit different. You can see 3 input lines and ground covered in the same plug, so there is no need to provide an additional ground if needed. Output terminals in this example are the bus bars for the low voltage units. We have the Sense connector, which is again spring cage type. The reset button, as I have already mentioned. The parallel connector to increase the power. We will see the higher power options. The LAN, including the LXI 1.5 certification, fully certified, RS-232-485, USB, and analog signals. As an optional slot, we here in the full rack as well to install additional options such as IEEE, Modbus, and EtherCAT. We will touch this later. For the units up to 3.4 kilowatts, we have the option to order with an IEC inlet. So this could be optional if your installation is easier with this type of input. Okay, let's jump into the GSP, the GENESYS Scalable Power Series, the 10 kilowatts. So we actually have 10 kilowatts in 2U. We can see in the top the same identical 5 kilowatts unit, and on the bottom the booster unit. The booster unit is there to provide additional 5 kilowatts of power. On the rear side, you can see very convenient and single input connector. Again, the mating is provided with the accessories. We have line 1, line 2, line 3, and the ground in the same plug. Output terminals, you can see in the example, there's the plus and the minuses are shorted between each other to increase the power in parallel. Same Sense connector, very important here. All the connections and communications to the unit are done with the master unit. There is no need to connect any plugs to the slave unit, except the paralleling cable, which is connected from the M output, the master output in the master unit, to the slave input, the S in the booster unit. This is all we have to do to configure the system, which is actually shipped in this configuration from the F factory. There is a service port in the booster unit. This port is not used for customers. This port is used only by the factory when the unit is calibrated, and for system upgrade in the field if needed, only by certified FAEs by TDK-Lambda. Okay, the biggest brother in the family, the GSP 15 kilowatts, GENESYS Scalable Power 15 kilowatts in a 3U height. We can see the same master unit with 2 boosters connected. So each booster is again 5 kilowatts. On the rear side, we have a single input connector, which is by Phoenix contact. Again, the mating is provided in the accessories. In this image, you can see the option for the high voltage units. So you can see the plug connected to the output and some white plastics. The white caps are there just for safety reasons. When you install the unit into the rack, just remove this and insert the wires. A sense connector, again, only on the master unit. And paralleling cables, here you can see 2 cables in the image, master-slave configuration. Service ports, again, for factory only. You don't need to connect any type of cables there. Okay, so if a GSP 15 kilowatts is not enough and you would like to increase the power even more, or we have purchased any other type of units from the GENESYS Plus series, we can connect additional units in parallel. The parallel configuration provides very fast transient response. When you connect parallel units, you will achieve actually very identical or very similar transient response, which is fast as a single unit. All the connected units actually act as a system. The measurements and the settings are measured and set into the master unit. You can see the whole range. For example, connecting 2 supplies in parallel, the settings are 1000 amps for the 10 volts. So you set and measure like a single unit. There is a single bus, which is a safe connection method, as we have seen in the previous slides. It's non-hazardous, it's user accessible, meaning you can touch the plug during operation, which is very convenient connection method. The advanced parallel concept is designed to support a connection of up to 30 units in parallel. So if you need to increase or your power needs are very high, you are welcome to connect additional units in parallel. The system automatically monitors the whole units connected to the system. So it means all the faults, if there are, reported to the master unit, from the master unit, reported by the communications or by analog connection to the PLC or the host controller. Very important is the automatic connection configuration. It's very simple mechanism made to the user to connect additional units in parallel. All you have to do is to connect master-slave cables. You will see a message on the display that asks to acknowledge the higher power. All you need to do is to press the current encoder and the system is automatically configured. Just as an example, if we are communicating to the unit, asking it for its identification string, you will see the reply of TDK-Lambda, which is the manufacturer. G means GENESYS Plus series, X is the voltage, Y will be the current, the serial number, and the firmware revision. Connecting 2 units in parallel will result eventually in the same manufacturer. You will see GS, which means GENESYS Plus Scalable Power, with the same voltage X, with double the current, 2Y. So eventually we have double the current, we have the same serial number and the firmware revision, which means the communication is done with the increased current as it was done with a single supply. And the identification of the new unit is very easy. A very important note here, the technology of the paralleling is patented. You can see here the United States patent number is 1067426. If you are just curious or interested in the technology, you are welcome to go into uspto.org and read some more information regarding the patent. The patent is going to be approved in Israel as well and in Europe in the upcoming months. Another feature that I'd like to introduce here is the high current. We were asked by many customers actually to increase furthermore the current of the system. So you have the option here from firmware version 02.111 that will be actually released next month. You can see in the display when you reach current above 9,999 amps, there is a K added to the display. So the unit will display current in kiloamperes. Okay, let's take a look into some examples of the GENESYS scalable power options and the advanced parallel systems. Here we have an example of 45 kilowatts of power. Please take a look in the image to the right. You can see here 3 GSP units connected in parallel. These are GSP 150, 102, which means 150 volts, 102 amps connected in parallel. Let's take a look here at some transient response and rise. So this application was actually intended for motor testing. Here we have tested a rise in CC mode, which means the power supply is running in constant current mode. Output voltage is set to 150 volts. Output current, we have achieved 291 amps. This is just because of the limitation of the equipment we had in the laboratory. So you can see here actually how clear the rise is and how fast the rise is. So it acts very identical to the single unit. Another example to the right, I have chosen to show the dynamic response. So you can see the output voltage of 150 volts. Here the power supply operates in constant voltage mode, a dynamic response in frequency of 100 Hertz. Output current changed from 50 to 95% due to, again, the limitation of the loads we had. So you can see that the sag during the transient or the dynamic is less than 0.7 volts, which is actually identical or almost identical to a single unit. Another example of additional system, which is a higher power, the 60 kilowatt example. Here we have a setup of 4 GSP units connected in parallel, 10 volts, 500 amps. In total, we have a system of 10 volts, 6,000 amps of parallel connection to achieve 60 kilowatts. On the left side, again, I have chosen to show the rise CC in the system. In this case, 6,000 amps. Power supply operates in constant current mode, 10 volt settings. We can see how clear the rise is and how fast it is, very similar to the single unit. On the right side, here we can see a bit tougher conditions, 10 Hertz transient response or dynamics, starting from 0 up to almost 100%, again, due to the limitation of the equipment we had. So we have done the dynamic from 0 amps up to 5,400 amps. Again, if you take a look in the plot, you can see the small sag, which is less than 1 volts, about 0.6, 0.7 volts. And of course, you can see this spike, which is caused by the inductance of the wires for such high power connected between the power supply to the load. A very important point here, we have tested some representative units in the family, starting from the low voltage units up to the high voltage units. We have fully tested the following configurations, which are 10 volts, 6,000 amps, 60 volt, 1,220 amps, and 600 volts, 102 amps systems. So you are welcome to order such high power configurations. The next slide, before we finish the topic of advanced parallel, is the connection or the kits we provide for such type of connections for high power. We have kits starting from the 2U up to 6U, meaning from 2 units up to 6 units in parallel. The kit includes the paralleling cables, as you can see in the image. It includes the output plates, the output bus bars, including all the bolts, nuts, and everything needed to connect these units in parallel, and the side plates to assemble the units for a clear installation into a rack or some other solutions. In the table here, you can see the available option of these kits. So you can see the 2U, 3U, 4U. These cover the whole series from 10 volts up to 600 volts. And for the 6U, we have only the option of the 60 up to 100 volts, which this is what we have seen that is mostly used by the customers. Okay, we have covered the scalable power. So if power is needed you can order high power systems, high power configurations. Let's go to the communication interfaces we have in this series. Here you can see the image of a GENESYS Plus half rack from the rear side. You can see how dense the communication side is to cover all the options as built in into the standard unit. So we have the RS-232-485. We have an input and output to cover the daisy chain configuration for easy connection of 32 units in the daisy chain. The communication speed covers 115 up to 2 kilobytes per second. So it's a pretty high speed for the communication. You will see that I compare this to GENESYS. You will see how fast it is. The LAN, which covers 10 and 100 megabits per second, which is again LXI 1.5 fully certified. And USB to the toe, as I have mentioned, a high retention plug, so the cable won't be pulled during operation. As for the analog programming and monitoring in this plug, DB26HD, the analog programming monitoring is non-hazardous up to 600 volts, which is higher compared even to the GENESYS ISO 510 option, which is isolated analog for the GENESYS. So if you need higher isolation, you are welcome to try the GENESYS Plus. The accuracy of the programming monitoring is also very high. For the voltage programming, it is 0.15%. For the current programming, is 0.4%. And both for the voltage and current monitoring, it's less than 0.5%. As for the optional slot here, we have the option to order the GPIB, supporting the IEEE 488.2. We have the option to order the Modbus TCP configuration or the EtherCAT. One note here, to make it easy for the standard setups in the industry, all of the communications support the standard SCPI, and including the built-in and the GPIB. Of course, for the Modbus TCP and the EtherCAT, these have unique protocols and languages, so this requires the PLCs for these configurations. A few additional words regarding the Modbus TCP and EtherCAT. So for the GENESYS Plus, here you can see an example. We have decided to go for a solution provided by HMS. HMS is a Swedish company which specializes in embedded communications, in field-based communications. So the solution we are using is ABCC CompactCom M40. The idea here is that if we need to expand for additional communications in the future, if customers require additional communication options, we can do it pretty fast to accommodate new standards. In this option that we have here, we can see two RJ45 ports. This is made especially for chaining the supply in each communication type. So for example, in Modbus TCP, each power supply acquires a unique IP address. So to communicate with each supply, it will receive a unique IP address. And for the EtherCAT, each supply will actually receive a unique slave address, which is automatically assigned by the PLC or the host controller in EtherCAT communication. One important note here, I received many questions regarding 485 or the daisy chain functionality when using this Modbus TCP and EtherCAT options. So please note that you can use the 485 or daisy chain supplies using the Modbus TCP, as the Modbus TCP is not strict on timing. But if you are using EtherCAT, you do not have the option to connect a RS-485 daisy chain configuration. So please order each unit with the EtherCAT to maintain this cyclic data and process data and SDOs as cyclic data to support the EtherCAT system if you would like to daisy chain supplies in EtherCAT. Okay, let's jump into the features and all the unique features and software or hardware, let's call it firmware options we have in the GENESYS Plus series. We will start from the slew rate control. Slew rate control is mainly used in applications like magnets or in applications like coils where we do not allow overshoots. So we can control the slew rate both for the voltage or the current. We can program it via the front panel or the communication. For some of you who have already tried and used, you will see there is a separate configuration for the voltage and separate configuration for the current slew. Both configurations are stored in the power supply EEPROM. For each of those, you can select to set the slew up and slew down independently. So if your application requires a unique slew up and a unique slew down, it can be set. And the programming range is 0.0001 up to 999.9 volts if we are using in the voltage slew, or amperes per millisecond if we are using in the current slew. And you can see that the step is 0.0001 volts or amperes per millisecond if very slow slew is required. Let's take a look at the examples. On the left side, we can see an example of a slope programmed to 3 volts per millisecond. So here we can see the reference programming in green and the output voltage in red. So it follows the reference. On the right side, we have a similar example programmed to 0.23 volts per millisecond. So you can see how slow the rise is compared to the left graph. Okay, a few notes here. I received many questions regarding this feature. The maximum slew rate value is limited by hardware, which means if you set a high value, for example, 999.9 volts per millisecond, the slew will be limited by the actual hardware of the unit. So it will slew the maximum power to charge the output capacitance. Actually, if we will require to achieve high slew or higher slew, we will discuss in the next slides about the fast models. So there you can set a higher slew actually. And another note, the function, this slew rate function is active during voltage or current programming only. So if you set the function and perform on-off operation, you will see that there is no effect. The output will actually start and turn off by the same slew. If you would like this to slew to effect, please use the programming. So just as an example, if you would like to make a slew for rising voltage, for example, turn on the units to 0 volts, set the programming voltage, for example, 10 volts, the unit will slew to 10 volts in the programming slew. The same for slew down, start from 10 volts, program to 0, let the unit to finish the slew, and then turn off the output. The next feature I would like to talk about is the sequencer and the memory. In many applications, we are talking about a production line where we need to synchronize equipment one to each other. It could be different equipment. It could be additional Genesis Plus supplies which synchronize one to each other. So we have the option to generate arbitrary waveforms, which are voltage or current. We can set in CV mode and system mode independent waveforms. We have 4 memory cells, which means we can build or create 4 waveforms. Each waveform has 100 steps. So you can build very narrow timing, very narrow steps. The supported profiles, just an example from the industry, are a starting profile, where we are talking about a battery start of a car. This could be IEC standards, like an example of a reset behavior. We can create some voltage drop profile, or even a simple momentary dip profile in any time in any voltage. One nice feature we have on the front panel, if you look at the front panel of the power supply, on the right bottom side, we have a digit. This digit actually identifies the active waveform, the active cell, and it blinks while the cell or the waveform is running. You will see another option here. You will see only the dash. If you have loaded the sequence but didn't store it in the supply, you are welcome to store it in any cell, so it will be stored for future operation. The next feature which comes usually along with the sequencer is the trigger system. The Genesis Plus supports both trigger in and trigger out. The trigger in can come in a digital manner by an encoder or a command, or it could be triggered by an electrical signal via the DB26 or the analog signals J1 we have discussed. The trigger out could be generated in the same signal, in the DB26 dish, same connector. And it's used, as I mentioned, to synchronize equipment in line or to synchronize additional Genesis Plus, which perform some, for example, different voltage waveforms or different operations. The trigger function has a very wide functionality. You can set to generate a trigger if power supply output changes from on to off, or for example, when voltage or current setting is changed, or a sequence step has changed, or the whole sequence has completed. It's very important sometimes to monitor if you monitor with a PLC and you would like to verify whether the condition of the power supply has changed, so you can monitor this pin. A simple example, equipment in line generated a trigger in. The Genesis Plus performs the required sequence. When it finishes, it generates a trigger out to continue the operation of the production line for the next equipment in line. I have already mentioned, but just to explain deeper, for the trigger in, if we use in communication the TRG, asterisk TRG, so we can trigger by the trigger in signal by a digital manner from the front panel by the current encoder, or by communications, including the optional communication slot using this command, asterisk TRG, or we can trigger an external signal by the J1 from the rear panel DB26HD, as we can see here. Okay, the pulse is 5 volts. You can look deeper into Genesis Plus specifications for additional information. The next feature I'd like to talk about is the constant power limit or constant power mode. If you are familiar with the standard Genesis series, current Genesis, we have the constant voltage mode operation, we have the constant current operation mode, and in the Genesis Plus, we have included the constant power operation mode or constant power limit, we call it. The constant power limit setting could be set via the front panel or the communication if you would like to limit the power of the unit. Very important note here, for the CP mode, we have included the support of the fallback, both constant voltage fallback and constant current fallback. Why is it important? For example, in applications where we use constant power like heaters or some different similar applications, we would like to identify if the output is open. So if the output load wires are open, the unit will jump into constant voltage mode. We can set it to off state using the fallback function. The same for short condition. If the unit or the load is shorted for some reason, it will jump into the CC mode, so the unit could be turned off. You can use it as a protection feature in your application. Additional very nice feature that we have in the constant power, and I think is very important, and I propose that you will use the feature. We can set the limits of voltage and current along with the power. So what do we actually get? We will limit the operation mode of the unit only to this area, which means the voltage will not rise above the voltage settings, the current will not rise above the current setting, and the power will not rise above the power settings. So we have covered the whole envelope of the unit, which is usually used by applications which require a higher protection envelope. Okay, for the battery industry, the battery applications, we have two applications built in the Genesis Plus. The first one is the internal resistance programming. We can actually simulate the internal resistance of a battery. So we can set an internal resistance value between 0 up to 1000 milliohms in a fine-grained steps of 1 million. If you look at the example of the circuit to the right, the actual output of the bus bars is Vout, RL is our load. So we can set the voltage setting of an ideal source. This is the actual voltage setting in the unit. RS is the setting of the internal resistance value. So the output voltage will be Vout minus I multiplied by R. The next feature is the preload control. To avoid the depletion of the battery when you have finished charging, assume a charging sequence. We have started to charge the battery. We have finished charging. We turn off the unit. In the standard unit, when we turn off the unit, the preload continues its operation. So the preload will actually discharge the battery with time. To avoid such case, or avoid installation of additional diodes in the final application to avoid reverse current, we have the option to turn off the preload 5 seconds after the output has turned off. So the option has the 5 seconds delay just to ensure that for the standard operation, the output capacitance is discharged. For batteries, if we keep it connected, there is no need. You can turn the feature on and the battery will not discharge over time. Another feature that I would like to talk about, which is very important from my point of view, which can protect your equipment, is the communication watchdog timeout. One note here, I would like to start from the bottom of the slide. This feature was introduced from firmware revision 02.105 a few years ago. You can update your units if needed, if you need the feature. The feature turns actually the output of the unit off if a communication watchdog timeout has occurred, which means if we enable the watchdog function and set a timeout setting in any range from 1 up to 3,600 seconds, if we didn't communicate with the unit for this time frame, the output of the unit will shut down, assuming that there is something abnormal with the communication between the host computer or the host PC or PLC to the unit. Okay, so this might protect your equipment. It will turn off the unit if it left without communication. Here, I would like to note that the watchdog feature is available in the SCPI language, which is the main used in the industry. Actually, most of the features or most of the new features in the GENESYS Plus series are available only in the SCPI. The Gen language is there just to provide communication with the GENESYS series. We will see in the next slides. Another important note here, the trigger event, which means the start of the watchdog timer, is done after the first incoming command or query. So if we have enabled the watchdog, it will not start its operation until the power supply actually receives the first command. This is done to ensure that the communication is actually live before we start the watchdog. So please note, the watchdog could be disabled via front panel or communication. The watchdog is also disabled if we switch from the SCPI to the Gen language, as the feature is not supported in the Gen language. And another nice feature, if we have decided to switch communication while the watchdog was on, if we switch, for example, from USB to LAN, the watchdog will automatically restart the timers when we send the first query. This means to ensure that the power supply provides enough time to switch to the new communication interface. Another feature, again, I would like to start from the end of the slide. The feature will be available from firmware version 02.111. This firmware revision will be released next month. This feature is actually done to increase the compatibility of the GENESYS Plus series to the GENESYS series. As I have already mentioned, we are planning to keep and maintain the GENESYS series for many years, so we increase the compatibility between the series. In this feature, if you are already using and familiar with the GENESYS series here, the reply of the Boolean commands for the GENESYS series is off-on. For the GENESYS Plus series, to increase the compatibility, we have increased, the compatibility to the market. So the Skippy commands reply with 0.1, both in the SCPI and the GENESYS language. So we have added a command, which is available both in the CPI language and in the Gen language. So you can actually choose the type of the reply, whether you would like the reply to be digit or text. If you choose digit, it will be 0.1. If it's text, it will be off-on. If you remember the previous slide, here we have the option to combine or to communicate using a daisy chain configuration with the whole set of latest programmable power supplies available by TLI, by TDK-Lambda Israel. We can see the GSP, the GENESYS Plus, the GENESYS Half Plus, the Z Plus, and the GENESYS. You can set a communication between all of these units using the RS485 daisy chain option, which means daisy chaining from the one unit to another, and so on and so on, while providing only a single COM port or a single USB port, meaning a single controller. There is no need to wire additional RS232 from the controller, no need to acquire additional COM ports. Please note here that if we are communicating with the GENESYS in the system, the GENESYS supports the Gen language. So remember to set Gen language for all the supplies connected in the chain. Remember to set an identical baud rate. If we have GENESYS in the system, the maximum baud rate for the GENESYS is 19.2 kilobaud. So set this baud to provide the maximum communication rate. And don't forget to set a unique address for each power supply in the chain. Okay, this is very important to communicate with any supply in the chain using its address. Okay, I have received many questions regarding the communication speed of the whole series. So on your screens, you can see this summary, which summarizes the RS-232-485 communication rate, the USB, IEEE, and LAN. In the Genesis, you can see many rates. For Genesis Plus, I have summarized only the highest rate, which is the most commonly used. There is no limitation. You can see the USB, the IEEE, and LAN. So as a summary, you can see that the Genesis Plus is much faster compared to the Genesis. Please choose the power supply according to your application. If you require high communication rate, please choose the Genesis Plus series. It provides the much higher communication speed and rate. A few comments here that might actually affect the timing speed is the query reply. Some replies to some queries might be long. For example, if we query the long sequencer commands, which may reply 100 points, as we have mentioned in the Genesis Plus, we will receive a 1.5 kilobyte very long ASCII string, so it takes some time. You can see that it's a bit longer. There might be some slight tolerance in the communication speed, especially in the LAN. The LAN is usually a very crowded communication. Many equipment is connected in the LAN, so there might be some few milliseconds delay. You can see here, especially if you're using WAN over the internet. And the PC performance affects communication speed. If your operating system is busy with many applications, many other tasks, please give it some time to communicate. Okay, here we have actually finished all the standard options for the hardware and firmware we have in the Genesis Plus series. And I would like to talk about the /F series. The /F series of the Genesis Plus is the fast models, which are made especially uniquely for the automotive market. These units have very high speed for the transient response and rise-fall times. The rise for this series is less than 1 millisecond. The fall is less than 2 milliseconds. Let's take a look at some examples. On your screen, you can see a test condition of a 20 volts unit operating in constant voltage mode. A current limit is set to 250 amps. A load connected to the unit is set in constant resistance, which simulates a pure resistor. You can see the plot is in a 1 millisecond per division scale. And you can see that the fall time of the unit is 0.85 millisecond, which is very, very fast compared to the standard unit, which has a fall time of about 50 milliseconds, according to the specifications of the series. Let's take a look into the rise as well. So a very similar plot, identical conditions of 20 volt, 250 amps. The load is simulating constant resistance. You can see that the rise time is actually 0.52 milliseconds, which is again very fast compared to about 30 milliseconds in the specifications of the standard unit. As for the availability of these fast models, the 20 volt series, which covers the 20 volt 1.7 kilowatts, 3.4 kilowatts, and 5 kilowatts, is already released, available to order. The 30 volt series, which covers the 1.7, 3.4, and 5 kilowatts, is planned to be released in July end, actually next month. And the 40 volt series, which covers the 1.7, 3.4, and 5 kilowatts, will be released in September end. So these models cover mainly all the used fast models in the automotive market. Okay, here I'm going to talk about a new feature, a PowerSync feature. We are going to release PowerSync option for the Genesis Plus series. The PowerSync provides fast output discharge, fast discharge of output capacitance, which is used again mainly for the automotive market, automotive applications. The preload will be a 100 watts constant with an ability of 300 watts peak power, which means for 60 seconds, we can draw 300 watts peak. but we will have to provide 500 seconds relaxation time, which means this time we will have to provide the preload to cool down before we can have the next peak of 300 watts power sink. If, for example, we sink the peak for 15 seconds, we will have to provide 45 seconds relaxation time so we can sink again 300 watts. And these are test conditions in the laboratory in standard room temperature of 25 degrees. Full specifications, of course, will be available and released as soon as the option will be available. Please note that the maximum sink current will be limited to 80 amps. So please do not expect 300 watts peak in 1 volt or 2 volts operation. One very important point and very nice feature from my point of view is that we have combined the support for both standard units and power sink units in the advanced paralleling system, which means if we connect power supplies in parallel, you can select supplies with a power sink and without power sink. So you are welcome to order as many power sink units as needed according to the needs of the application. We have here also the option to enable and disable the power sink. We can do it via command, or via the front panel, including all the optional communication options, which include the IEEE, Modbus, TCP, and Ethercat. And again, to support the battery applications, the power sink is disabled 5 seconds after the power supply is turned off. So we have this feature as well to synchronize into the internal preload. So this will prevent the battery discharge if we keep the battery connected to the power supply after off state. Please take a note that the supported models for this option will be 1.7 kilowatts and 4 kilowatts, 10 volts, 20 volts, 40 volts, 60 volts, 80, and 100 volts. And there won't be 5 kilowatt units, as we need the internal space to fit in the power sink modules. The release date for this option is planned to November end. Another optional module, or another option, sorry, for the Genesis Plus series is the ISO 420, IS420, which is an isolated analog controlled by 4 and 20 milliampere. So the option here, if we look at the snapshot, it occupies the optional module slot installed here. In the bottom picture, we can see the example of the option installed in the full rack unit. The top one was for the half rack. This option provides both control and monitor of output voltage and current by 4 up to 20 milliamps. This feature is very useful in a harsh environment, in a very noisy environment, or where we have long wire controls in the field. So as the unit is actually driving current, it drives current to the unit, so it will be more precise and more robust to noise. The programming and readback accuracy at this point, we design to be less than 1%. The actual results will follow as soon as we will be closer to the release date, but it is going to be less than 1%. The output, the plug for the option is the industry standard DB9. Please note that the plug is female, so you will have to provide the male plug, the mating plug. It's not provided in the accessories. And another important point is that this option actually disables the analog voltage and current programming by voltage. So the analog voltage and current programming will be by current only. As the supported models here, the option is designed for the whole Genesis Plus series for all models, including the GSPs, 10, 15 kilowatts, and supports parallel operation, which means if you plan to connect units in parallel or GSP in parallel, you need to order this type of option only for the master unit, only for the first unit in the chain. The release date is planned to August end. Okay. At this point, we have covered the hardware and firmware options. Let's take a small look and jump to the applications. So please let me start from the virtual control panel. The first point, I will start from the installer. we have provided for all the programmable series or for the next tools that we are developing, including the programmable series, a comprehensive installer package. The installer covers the whole programmable series by TDK-Lambda, which is the GENESYS, the Z+, and the GENESYS+. There is a single installation file, which is relatively small. It's less than 100 megabytes. It's very small, and it covers the whole series. It covers the GUI. It covers all the drivers, including USB, IVI, LabVIEW. It covers the EtherCAT option files, the ESI files, and the ENI files that you can generate. And it covers the user guide of the installer and the application. So it's a very comprehensive package. Again, the features is a single file solution. You can download a single file from TDK-Lambda website. It will be available in a few months. It covers the whole series. You don't have to search for a specific driver. Everything is covered in one package. It's very simple and automated installer. All you have to do to install all these packages is just select the full installation type, click install. All these options will be installed into your PC. It will cover the USB drivers. Please know that USB drivers are covered for the whole series. The IVI drivers cover the whole series, independent, unique for each model. The LabVIEW drivers is available. We have the support for the EtherCAT and Modbus TCP. The documentation here includes and covers the installation process. So you're welcome to read how to install, how to uninstall, how to repair, and what are the abilities of the installer, and how to fully operate the virtual control panel that I will show in the next slide, the actual GUI. And of course, how not, we have to provide a modern and a neat design, which is very, let's say, 2020, 22, 21. Okay, let's go or dive into the GUI itself. The installer will actually install the GUI, and the GUI provides the option to control and monitor the whole series, the GENESYS, the Z+, and the GENESYS+, under one roof, meaning it provides a full solution. We can see here an example of a screen. On the bottom line, we can see the GENESYS+ is connected, GENESYS+ half rack, voltage, current, and so on. All the information of the control supply is available. This is a basic screen of the monitoring. You can monitor voltage, current, and so on, including the program. You can control the unit. All the features are available. Very important note here, and very important key feature in this application. The application is fully adaptive, which means the application automatically detects the connected supply and shows or demonstrates using these icons all the available features. In your screen, you can see an example of the sequencer. So as I have already mentioned, we have a GENESYS+ connected. So you can see in the application that it provides 4 cells, as we have 4 sequencer cells in the GENESYS+, in an option to set 100 points in the table for the sequence. And you can see the plot of the sequence you are trying to build. If you connect other series Z+, it will be adapted to 12 points according to the Z+ series, and so on. Another key feature in the application is the automatic detection. The application or the GUI automatically scans all the supplies which are connected to the host PC. It covers the GENESYS, again, Z+, and the GENESYS+, actually all the latest programmable power supplies by TDK-Lambda Israel. It supports RS-232 485 communications, USB communication, LAN, IEEE. Please also note very important key feature. It supports also Modbus TCP and EtherCAT. This support we didn't provide in the past. So here in this application, in this GUI, actually we provide all the communication interfaces available for the GENESYS+ series. It supports both CPI, GEN, EtherCAT SDOs, PDOs, and Modbus TCP registers. For you, it's just a clear screen. It detects all the options, including the daisy chain multidrop. An example, as you could imagine, scanning all available COM ports of a PC, USB ports, LAN ports, the network interface cards takes some time. If you have the information of the connected supplies, you can refine the selection to provide an increased scan speed. For example, we can choose the GENESYS series. We can select the RS communication. You can see that the GEN is selected automatically, as the GENESYS series in RS supports only GENESYS. In addition, you can refine the settings even more. You can select the device addresses to scan, and you can select the baud rate to scan. Simply pressing scan, and it will detect all the GENESYS supplies connected to your host PC automatically. Just as an example, we have scanned for the supplies. This is the list we get. A very important point here, the list of the supplies appears on the fly, meaning each supply detected during the scan is seen. So if you have already found your power supply, you can stop the scan. There is no need to wait till the end. In this example, we can see the communication USB interface, is USB. The main unit is GENESYS Plus. We can see that all of them are connected to COM6, which means the units are connected in the JZ chain configuration. We can see the identification and the address of each unit. Another unit you can see here is the LAN unit. You can see the IP address if you'd like to communicate with the unit without the application. So it's a very nice feature. Simply select the supply, click connect, and you will communicate and see all the features and the supply, full control, full monitor, and so on. Another feature which was requested for a pretty long time, so we have decided in this case to implement, is a terminal. We know that we have many terminals in the market like TerraTerm and so on. In this case, anyhow, we have decided to develop a terminal because we have decided to include both the Modbus and the EtherCAT support for the terminal. You can see that you have the input field to enter commands. You can press enter or the send command to send the command or the query. You have the control of the terminal. You can clear the terminal, save the log of the terminal into a file if you need some service or support with commands, or just have to instruct your customer with some special commands. You can save and send it to your customer. You can show the commands and the responses. As you can see the client and the power supply reply. And you have the option to control the termination character. You can see that it turned off, so you don't see the /r/n termination, the carriage return, and the line feed. This option is very useful if you are building your own application that you would like to learn about the terminators required. Another nice point is the theming. You are very well aware that the world likes the dark mode. So we have the dark mode theming. You can set the the black or gray background in addition to the blue fonts. So if you would like another theming and adaptation to your eyes, whatever you prefer, you can choose the color of the application and the font and the background. Everything is fully adaptive. Okay, we have finished during this webinar for the GENESYS Plus features, GUIs, and application. I would like to present 2 last slides. Please bear with me a little bit more. This will be the LAN and the USB option for the GENESYS series. As I have already mentioned, we do not have any plan to obsolete the GENESYS series. Nevertheless, we increase its functionality. We add additional features to the series. So in the upcoming few months, in 2 months, there will be a new LAN module. You can see a snapshot here. The LAN model will actually include the LAN with LXI LEDs and USB. So in a single module, you will receive the LAN and the USB. If you order the LAN, you will receive the LAN and the USB. If you decide to order the USB, you will also receive the LAN and the USB in one package with the same unique identification, which is called LAN. So the module actually occupies the optional module slot. You can see in the image in the bottom how it looks like. The control switches on the left side, which you are familiar with, are used to select the communication. So you can select between RS-232, meaning the option is disabled. You can select the LAN or the USB. According to the switches configuration, you will see in the user manual of this new option. So for the LAN, it keeps the current LAN options, which are 10, 100 megabits per second, fully LXI 1.5 certified, and adds the USB 2.0, again, high retention plug. So the cable is not easily pulled out. The LAN main features is 10, 100 megabits per second, auto MDIX, which means we can use the straight or the patch, the crossed cable, full duplex rates, half duplex rates, everything is automatically detected. It supports TCP, UDP, and VESA sockets, whichever fits more for your application. It has a built-in web server for an easy access and basic controls you are familiar with from the latest LAN options. It supports up to 30 units in parallel. It communicates in Skippy language. and IVI-COM and IVI-C are available to download from IVI organization, and this will be included in the next GUI that is going to be released. Actually, if you already have a LAN, you don't have to change any driver. You will continue using the same drivers already installed and available in your PC, and you don't have to change anything in your application. As for the USB, as already mentioned, is a 2.0 standard Type B plug with high retention option. It actually emulates a virtual COM port, which can be controlled using the standard terminal. There is no need to install any special drivers, so it emulates another COM port in your PC. Again, it supports the full multi-drop. You can connect up to 30 supplies in the daisy chain configuration via the RS485. It supports, in this case, both SCPI, the standard commands instrument language, and the GENESYS language. So if you already have applications which are written in RS232 or 485, you can keep using this in the GENESYS language, connected via the USB port. And you have the option to change language by a command. The USB drivers, which cover the whole series, there will be common for the GENESYS Z+ and GENESYS Plus, are available in TDK-Lambda website and will be available in the GUI as well. Some other general important features, the built-in bootloader. This LAN revision will include a bootloader, meaning there is an option to upgrade the firmware in the field. Again, the upgrade can be made only by TDK-Lambda personnel. This is to avoid any mistakes and avoiding any risk of malicious software. The release date for this option is July end, so it will be available to order very soon. And again, the GENESYS family, as you can see, it's fully maintained. We are going to produce it, to sell it for many years. You are welcome to order, including the new option. So this was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention and listening. I really hope you have enjoyed this a bit maybe short, maybe long webinar, according to your view. And I'll give you a few minutes to questions. You are welcome to ask. I see this in the chat and I will answer.
Ari, I answered most of the question. I kept two for you, so you can answer that. Oh, there are more. It's starting now, so please.
Okay, so please let me look at the questions. So
I will help you with the question you will answer. So do we have a question to power 4 photovoltaic module at the same time with the same current and voltage? Does TDK can implement an output device to those GENESYS power supply for divide the current by 4 photovoltaic modules?
So I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, but there are two options. If you would like to increase the power, you have the option to connect in advanced parallel. Advanced parallel of a bit different type is available in the GENESYS series as well. If you would like to control 4 independent power outputs, you are welcome to connect the RS485 configuration, which provides a unique address to each power supply. So actually, each module is connected to an independent power supply, so we can control the current and the voltage. Hope it's clear, and that's what the question is relating to.
I can add that, please remember that we have also lower power, like the Z+, that if the need is for 200 or 400 watt, so you can use 3 or 4 of them and then synchronize them by software.
Okay.
Additional question. Can I display a simple ramp directly on a device without a PC? For example, 3 or 4 different current or a certain time, 1 to 2 hours.
So for the GENESYS Plus, for the sequencer, to program the different sequences, you will have to connect a PC or any other host controllers to program the sequence at least once into the unit. Once these are programmed and this could be stored into the unit, you can store the sequences, and then you can run this from the front panel. But you have to store it the first time to program this via a host controller, any PC or any other controller.
Thanks. Additional, can I use a PC software to program and run, for example, overload cases?
I don't clearly understand what does overload cases means, but these power supplies are programmable power which have constant voltage and constant current. So if we reach the maximum current, the power supply will go into CC mode, into constant current. So the current is actually limited by the constant current setting. Or if you need, you can set the constant power option for the Genesis Plus if you would like to limit the power, depending on the application.
There is additional question. Are you going to release kits for parallel connection up to 12 Genesis Plus units?
So this information will be provided in the future. There will be solutions for higher power. Please be patient for a month or two and you will have a solution.
Additional, it is possible to run programs from external memory, for example, USB.
Okay, so we are very strict to security. As we are very strict to security, we don't provide any option to connect external USB devices. So just via the dedicated application, we provide the GUI or the command set, the CPI command set, which is available in the manual. Again, the reason is we do not provide direct access to power supply memory, only via dedicated commands to avoid storage of any malicious software and so on.
How does power supply qualify Milgrade spec? Also, I can answer that. First, look on the spec. There are for vibration, for example, spec and standard that are very close or in the mil standard. We are not designing to the mil spec, but in a lot of cases, the industrial spec are even more strict. So it's need to be tested case by case. If you have something to add, Arya?
No, this is clear.
Could the customer connect 30 pieces of Genesis in parallel? We show you the result. And again, we asking to be patient and to keep follow us. We will have news also for that in the next few months or weeks. Question from Nir. If there is any special cooling instruction when you mount several power supply in a rack?
Okay, so here, as I have mentioned in my slides, the cooling is front to rear. The units are fully tested. You can mount as many units as you like in a rack. Just keep the ambient temperature below 50 degrees. So you are good to go inside the rack. There is no limit to the amount of the units.
It's called the zero stacking.
Zero stacking, right? Thank you.
Okay, quite long. Hope they will be patient. I had opportunity to test recently one Genesis Plus 60 volt 70 amp. Very nice tool, thank you. Nevertheless, 2 remarks. The sense spring cage is fragile and lab connection disconnected many times and lead to destroyed one contact. Second remark, when the positive sense is lost, the power supply goes into OVP. Safe but different behavior than the Genesis or Z Plus. Lose of sense plus, inaccurate voltage of PC output.
Okay, so thank you for the comment. This is a very important comment for us, so we can improve in the future and learn. Regarding the OVP functionality, the OVP of the Genesis Plus is a bit different to the Genesis. This is correct. When the wire is disconnected, the voltage actually jumps up. This is a very important key point here. There is a firmware update, which is very important, we have released. You are welcome to contact your local dealer to perform the update. It will actually be released in the near future. So it will jump into OVP in 0.6 milliseconds, meaning in 600 microseconds, which is very fast. And I'm sure it solves all the OVP issues that we have in the series.
I also send a personal answer and we will involve, if needed, also QA, but please contact your local office. Is there a solution to get configuration backup from the device?
A configuration backup. Okay, as for the configuration backup for the EEPROM, you have the option to store and recover configuration options. These are actually stored in the supply. We would like to avoid general memory settings in any external device, as again, in the industry, the memory issue is very, let's say, very strict, and we are careful with pulling data out of the unit. So we do not pull any data out of the unit, especially for configuration, which are unique for each customer. So if you store any settings, you can store into the cells inside the unit, or you can write an application by your own to store all the configuration via the SCPI commands. So it will be unique for our application and used for your own only.
Additional question, USB 3 is in a future plan for real-time application request from a customer.
Okay, this is a nice question. We had discussed USB 3.0. Actually, in the speeds required by the SCPI commands, it is enough even to use USB 1.1, meaning the speed of the commands will not actually increase, as this is the actual time required by the power supply to actually perform the command. If we will take a look at the slides that I have presented for the Genesis Plus speed, you can see that there are a few milliseconds as soon as the power supply actually replies. We are doing everything we can to increase the speed. It will be increased in the future, but in this case, the USB 3.0 will not provide actually additional speed because it's not limited by the protocol. It's just limited by the time required for the power supply to actually perform the desired command.
Okay, Arya, I think it's the end of the question. Thank you again to all for attending. Thank you, Arya, for that professional session you make, and more than that, to be part of a very talented, young, and strong R&D team in TDK-Lambda Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hope you have enjoyed my voice for the last hour. Thank you all.
Thank you.